Makai was a land of forests located within a portal. At a certain moment, an unusual battle was taking place there. A lizard was fighting 3 tubers in an epic clash. Those beings seemed like old rivals. Conflicts like that were common in that region. When a snake joined the fight, there was a brief hesitation among the spectators, who silently wondered who would win this time. One of the men thought the outcome was predictable, but one of the women noted that the clash was more balanced than usual. As they exchanged comments, the snake tried to launch a direct attack, but was surprised by a strike from the sharp leaf of one of the tubers. Injured, it began to cry and fled the battlefield, clearly defeated. An eagle flying overhead announced that the mandrake had won once again, now totaling 99 victories in 99 fights. Despite the loss, the others had also shown effort, especially Sasa, who had fought well. The only human present silently praised the intensity of the fight and the skill of those involved. After the battle, the mandrake prepared for her usual beauty treatment. Her body was carefully polished, and she received a relaxing massage. The human didn't quite understand why she enjoyed it so much, but respected her preference. Meanwhile, a little girl approached, hungry. She wanted to know how much longer until the meal was ready. The man replied that it was almost done, and assured her she would love the day's dish. The girl, excited, said it would only be complete with some special eggs, and he agreed, adding that this final touch would make everything perfect. With everything ready, he finished the dish by sprinkling small seeds on top. Dinner was served, fried rice with the hot special of the day. Everyone gathered around the food and delighted in it. When a woman wearing a skull on her head complimented his cooking skills, he became embarrassed and shy. Even in a demonic world, he realized there were moments of joy and peaceful coexistence. He thought that maybe living there wasn't as bad as he had imagined. But all that peace hit a tragic origin. Some time ago, a portal had opened and brought destruction with it. The so-called demon world spread across planet Earth, invaded by brutal and dangerous monsters. In response, some people awakened special powers. These people became hunters, tasked with fighting the monsters and protecting humanity. With their unique abilities, the hunters gave the world a new chance. They prevented the complete collapse of civilization and allowed cities to be rebuilt. Despite the ongoing challenges, at least people could return to a minimally dignified life. To maintain this peace, hunters had to fight monsters every day. But as the years passed, a new problem arose. The number of naturally awakened hunters was insufficient. Humanity needed an alternative. That's when an extreme solution emerged. Through research and experiments, a new artificial life form was created, the Chimera hunters. These beings were made from death row prisoners, combined with animal parts, monster cells, and rare minerals found within the portals. After many sacrifices, the first Chimera was created. Technology soon allowed for large-scale production, merging science and magic in a revolutionary way. This fusion was celebrated worldwide as the ultimate solution against the monsters. However, this achievement came at a cost. The morality of hunters plummeted. Even so, countless lives were saved, and humanity began to recover what it had lost. Slowly, the world returned to what it once was. Decades passed. On a silent night, deep within an illegal Chimera research lab, something strange was happening. In the underground, on level 18, some doctors were analyzing a specific Chimera. The creature's arm was visibly rotting. One of the scientists advised staying away from the cage, but another, holding a flashlight, assured them everything was under control. He stated that the Chimera's brain was completely destroyed and, without direct commands, it couldn't move. The decomposition was clear. Perhaps it was a side effect of its creation. After a quick analysis, the scientists recorded their observations and decided to return later if needed. The Chimera remained silent, motionless. In the director's office, the researchers reported the critical condition of Chimera number 17. Its body was extremely damaged. Any other Chimera would have already died, but this one was still holding on. They estimated it had, at most, 1 month left to live. Given this, the director decided it would be sent on its final mission. He ordered number 17 to be used in a suppression operation within a portal. He made it clear that the hunters should be evacuated from the area, and the Chimera should not return to Earth. That would be its last mission. Hours later, inside the portal, in a rocky mountain zone of the demon world, number 17 moved skillfully, facing all creatures with ease. It sliced flying monsters in half with precision. Everything seemed under control until a new threat emerged. A gigantic sandworm burst from the ground, but the Chimera feared nothing. Even in front of a giant creature, it faced it without hesitation and shredded it into several chunks of disgusting meat. The monsters in the distance were hit by its energy blast, a concentrated beam that cut across the battlefield and even pierced the mountain in the background. The nearby hunters watched in awe. That creature had defeated all the enemies with a single attack. It was no wonder it had been classified as an S-rank Chimera. Even with the victory, something felt off. The portal remained open. One of the hunters commented that there were still no signs it was about to close. Another replied that there was nothing to worry about. As long as the Chimera was there, they could keep fighting the monsters without major risks. The hunters only needed to deal with the weaker creatures, leaving the dirty work to her. Shortly after, the Red Spectre was confirmed. It was the signal that the mission was ending. The hunters began to withdraw from the area, but the Chimera remained on the battlefield. One hunter hesitated for a moment, wondering if they shouldn't bring her back, but her colleague was blunt. There was no such order. That creature already had its days numbered. The huntress felt uneasy about it. She knew that without the Chimera, the mission would have failed. But the other hunter made it clear that getting attached to that creature made no sense. Chimeras weren't human. They had no feelings, only obeyed commands. They were created solely to kill. The mission's goal was to protect the hunters, and that was exactly what had been done. Meanwhile, the Chimera kept fighting. One of her arms had been ripped off. Her eyes were damaged. But even so, she continued destroying every monster in her path. She knew there was no turning back. She knew this was her final battle. Even so, not a single hunter had died. In total, 1,823 monsters had been defeated by her. And when the moment of her death finally arrived, number 17 remembered something. Fragments of memory surfaced. She had once been a child. A long time ago, she had been kidnapped. In the darkness of a Chimera's damaged mind, disconnected images emerged. She couldn't fully understand what those memories were, but watched them as if dreaming from afar. 79 years ago, he had been left at an orphanage. Someone found him and took care of him. Even so, he was aggressive. He used to fight with other children who provoked him. Those fights ended badly, with serious injuries, which led to his expulsion from the orphanage. That was when he was kidnapped and taken to an illegal experiment. There, he was transformed into what is now known as Chimera, number 17. Unlike the others, he had a special trait. His side effects were almost non-existent. He was a rare case where the human consciousness survived inside a Chimera. Before that, he had already been a hunter, a fighter who saved lives and battled monsters every day. But even when thanked, he showed no emotion. He responded mechanically, like a machine. In that moment, he began to question things. Why was he there? Why were those memories returning? Maybe it was a mental collapse. The side effects of countless experiments had finally reached their limit. After 15 years of modifications and over 500 monster implants in his body, he had reached S rank. The project was considered a success, but it had turned him into something else. He was no longer human. He was treated like a hunter's pet, fed like a dog, avoided by regular people, used as a living weapon. 3 days ago, he had completed his main mission. He had eliminated every monster he was tasked with. However, something unexpected happened. The 527 implants that made up his body began to react, and in that moment, he returned to human form. He was reborn, but he was still in the demon world. Even with his body restored, he didn't feel entirely human. He still carried the powers inherited from monsters. He felt discarded, and now, abandoned there, he realized something important. The number marked on his arm, the experiment's ID, had vanished. He was no longer number 17. He also knew something else. His internal core could guarantee up to 3 resurrections, as long as it wasn't destroyed. That meant he could still live, but something felt strange. He thought the cells of dead monsters couldn't merge with human ones. Somehow, his body had returned to peak condition. The effects of the experiment seemed to have disappeared. His mind was now clear. The blurred memories, the spells that blocked his thoughts and prevented his escape, all of it had vanished. Perhaps, for the first time in decades, he could live as a normal human. The former identity of number 17 was now just a false name. His real name, he tried to remember. The person who had taken in Cheon Do-yoon at the orphanage once said he had a rough and aggressive nature. That's why they asked him to try living differently to help others, or at least make an effort to do good. During that scolding, Cheon remembered his name and wondered how a child abandoned in an orphanage could help other people. It just didn't make sense to him. As he pondered this, he asked himself what he should do next. The word revenge crossed his mind, but he knew that to seek revenge, one needed a target. And deep down, he wasn't really in the mood for revenge. He had no way back to Earth anyway, so all that was left was to keep on living. Eventually, he would come across another human, and maybe then he would know what to do. For now, he had made a decision. He would live as a human. The problem was, Cheon was completely naked. As he kept walking, he finally found a green area with forests and rivers. As he approached the river, he came across a large, dead demonic bird. Cheon thought it might have been the result of a territorial dispute, but soon noticed the creature's body had no serious wounds. It seemed to have died from poisoning. He decided he could use the bird's hide to make some clothing. Using his ability to form a blade with one hand, he began cutting the creature. Perhaps because of his lab experiences, he still remembered how to open up a monster like that. But as soon as he sliced the carcass open, a cloud of venom spread in all directions. Luckily, the poison had no no effect on him, he just needed to wash the hide in the river. Xian washed everything right there. The hide was thick, as expected from monsters, so he had to beat it repeatedly to soften it. After much effort, it became as supple as treated leather, almost like a coat. He was in the process of cutting out neck, arm, and leg openings, transforming it into a fine-looking tunic, when the creature suddenly moved. The bird, once dead, stirred. Xian looked carefully. It seemed to be an undead-type monster. If it had been a threat, Xian would have already finished it off after all. He was a hunter. But upon closer inspection, he realized the creature was very weak, likely still poisoned. He concluded there was no need to kill it. The creature shook its head, trying to say something, and although Xian didn't understand, he figured maybe it was a lucky day for both of them. If this was a second chance at life for the monster, it should make it count. If fate had truly brought them together, perhaps they'd meet again. Later, Xian found a cave and thought it could be a good place to stay. However, a giant centipede suddenly appeared, collapsing the cave entrance and launching an attack. The place was too dark, as he quickly realized. Without much thought, he cut the centipede's neck with his own arms and decided to reject the location. It was far too dark for his taste. After that, he wandered through a snow-covered mountain. He had just fought several yetis and found it difficult to get food in that environment. He didn't like it there either. He kept exploring. The next forest was filled with poisonous mushrooms. Rejected. Then he found a swamp with too much mud. Didn't like that either. Next, a region with excessive heat unbearable. Only after so much searching did he finally find a place that seemed ideal. There was a large waterfall. The scenery was beautiful. The water was clean and clear, and it had plenty of demonic fish. He was surprised to find himself thinking that, for the first time, he would call the demon world beautiful. All around were trees, fruits, flowers, and the air was fresh. There, he could set up camp, fish, cook, and rest. The place seemed perfect to call home. But as he admired it all and thought about where he would build his shelter, a portal opened not far from there. From it emerged a robot, asking if this was really the demon world. And while Xian was preparing to make that place his home, he had no idea that his new life was about to be interrupted before it could even begin. With his wires sharp as blades, Xian Doan cut down all the surrounding trees. Then, using those same wires, he conveniently gathered all the firewood. Once he had enough wood for what he wanted to build, he tore out all the roots from the ground to level the terrain. Now it looked suitable. Being extremely strong, Xian could lift massive logs with a single arm. He began construction by placing the first pillar into the ground. As he did this, he felt something strange. It was as if he was experiencing free will for the first time. Building his own house was unexpectedly fun. After breaking down some wood, he created planks for the floor of the cabin. He used slime goo obtained from a monster he had recently defeated as an adhesive for the planks, pillars, and walls. He knew the substance hardened into something as tough as stone, although he wasn't sure if it was waterproof. Even so, he decided to trust it. When he finished the construction and looked at the result, he realized it looked awful. It resembled an abandoned house where something terrible had happened. Despite that, Xian found the place surprisingly comfortable. Still, he felt that something was missing. He thought for a moment and remembered one of the lessons he had taken back when he was still a young Chimera hunter. In that lesson, they showed what human homes used to look like before the portals opened. That's when he realized what was missing. People used to grow things in their gardens. He knew he couldn't raise a dog in the demon world, but maybe he could start a garden. The problem was he didn't know how to grow plants from that world. Still, he remembered there were icy mountains nearby. In those regions where demonic energy was denser, it was possible to find mandrakes. As he climbed to the snowy peaks, it began snowing for real. The white landscape reminded him of the day he was kidnapped and taken to the lab. Back then, it had also been snowing heavily. He felt lucky to have been captured early, since now, as a Chimera, he no longer had to worry about cold, frostbite, or even hunger. As he neared the area where mandrakes grew, he sensed more and more demonic energy in the air, until finally, he found some of those small plants emerging from the soil. It was known that mandrakes were extremely sensitive to stress, and slight changes in their environment could kill them. Even so, Xian decided to transplant a few near his home. He picked young mandrakes, thinking they would adapt better to a new environment. Only after pulling the first plant did he remember that mandrakes usually screamed when uprooted. However, this one was sleeping. The second one too. Only the last one was awake, but it didn't scream. Instead, it yawned and fell back asleep. Xian realized that the infamous scream only happened when mandrakes were artificially grown in the human world, where magical energy was too weak. There, extreme stress made them scream and die. But in the demon world, they seemed peaceful. None of them resisted or tried to fight back, even while being pulled from their natural habitat. Xian even wondered if maybe they saw him as one of their own. After all, he had monster blood, and even mandrake cells in his body. For him, that worked just fine. He placed the 3 little plants inside his tunic and figured their low stress levels would be good. If they grew well, maybe one day he could use their roots to make tea, probably tasty. Suddenly, Qian heard combat noises coming from a nearby area. They sounded like real fighting. He figured there were hunters nearby and wondered what they were doing in such a dangerous place. Perhaps they were looking for portal stones, something useful in emergencies. Meanwhile, the hunters were struggling. They were under attack by a horde of snow bunnies. The first of them managed to create a magic barrier, but it was about to break. In that desperate moment, he wondered why he had even accepted the mission. When the barrier finally shattered, he cried out for help, and help came like a missile. In the middle of the snowy mist and smoke, a figure appeared. It was Qian, calmly stepping forward. He commented to himself that it had been a while since he'd seen snow bunnies. With a simple use of his intimidating aura, all the rabbits fled in terror, trampling over each other to escape. The hunters were in shock at what had just happened. They couldn't believe an entire horde of B-rank monsters had fled just at the sight of one person. It was something completely unheard of. Still, they didn't hesitate to deeply thank Qian Doan for saving their lives. The hunter who had created the barrier introduced himself as Kim Tae. When he heard Qian's name, he thought he'd never heard of him before. Judging by his appearance and simple clothing, he guessed Qian was from the hermit class, someone who lived in isolation, far from the big cities and guild systems. Qian was curious and asked why they were there. He found it strange to see such weak hunters who looked like D-ranks in such a dangerous area. The hunters explained they were there because of the mission's payment. They had been sent to capture a live chimera and bring it back to the human world. Upon hearing that, Qian became alert. Were they after him? But one of the hunters explained that the chimera in question had escaped from a research lab. It was a kind of mechanical creature that had suddenly leapt into a portal and vanished. With that information, Qian concluded they weren't after him. Even so, he decided not to get involved. He just wanted to grab a few portal stones in case he needed to flee from danger later. He questioned the hunters about their equipment. It made no sense for them to enter the demon world empty-handed. Where were the supplies and the portal stone? One of the hunters angrily revealed that the rest of the team had taken everything. Those traitors had planned it from the start. One of the higher-ranked hunters had volunteered to guide them, but at the right moment, he took all the equipment and left the group to die, abandoning them surrounded by a horde of monsters. In desperation, the hunters asked if Qian could try to retrieve the equipment. They needed to return to Earth, as they knew very well what happened to hunters exposed to demonic energy for too long. It was explained that the time a hunter could remain in the demon world depended directly on their level of awakening. Those who didn't return in time for purification risked death. Seeing the gravity of the situation, Qian agreed to help. Using his sharp sense of smell, he quickly found the trail and shot off like a missile toward the target. Meanwhile, in another part of the region, the robotic chimera observed the surroundings from a height. The traitorous hunters had finally found the creature and approached, believing it was cornered. It was the perfect opportunity to capture it. But the chimera reacted. Realizing the danger, it declared that if the place was dangerous, then it should eliminate the danger. By the time Qian arrived, it was already too late. The hunters were either dead or had fled, and the equipment was scattered on the ground like trash. From the scene, Qian deduced that the chimera had fought while changing shape. He recalled the explanation one of the hunters had given. It was a robot made of rare liquid metal, capable of freely altering its form. Because the material was so valuable, the creature's body was small, about the size of a child or a large dog. Qian was impressed that such a small creature had managed to defeat 5 B-rank hunters. Back at the rendezvous point, the 2 remaining hunters were losing hope. Their bodies already showed visible signs of contamination from demonic energy. That's when Qian reappeared, bringing all the lost equipment as if he were a walking miracle. One of the hunters, desperate, begged for his life. Qian knew they no longer had a portal stone. Kim Tae, overcome with fear, offered 20 million won in exchange for salvation. Qian wasn't interested in money at that moment, but he figured it might be useful if he ever returned to Earth. He decided to accept the deal. With a firm motion, he broke the portal stone to activate the dimensional passage. Kim Tae was overwhelmed with emotion. He said he would never forget what Qian had done. While rescuing his severely injured friend, Qian asked if a portal stone still cost around 200,000 won. Kim Tae replied that prices had gone up a lot and that nowadays, one of those stones cost about $1 million. Surprised, Qian commented that Kim Tae had paid far too much for that service, so he decided to repay him accordingly. He placed his hand over the injured man's body and began transferring his own mana. Mana infusion was an extremely risky technique, even for experienced hunters. If the energy intertwined the wrong way, it could cause both mana cores to collapse, resulting in instant death. But the infusion Qian performed was perfect. All the demonic energy was purified. both from the injured man's body and from his own. The hunter, now saved, confirmed with relief that they were out of danger. But Kim Tae, still shaken, could barely believe what had just happened. Kim Tae's eyes were nearly popping out of his skull in astonishment. While several hunters bowed and thanked Cheon for saving their lives, Cheon Do-won was already walking away without saying a word, simply leaving. Still in shock, Kim Tae silently asked himself who the hell that guy was. When Cheon finally returned to his home, now cozy and even beautiful in its own way, he was relieved to see that nothing had been broken in his absence. Plus, he had made some unexpected money. He planned to store the ones safely. That's when he noticed the mandrakes were slowly waking up. They were stretching with sleepy, quiet expressions. He acknowledged that it had been a long journey for them, so he decided to replant them right there, near the house. But once placed in the soil, they grew sad, too quiet and withdrawn. Cheon noticed that something was bothering them. Perhaps the new habitat was affecting the little plants. Maybe they were hungry, maybe just struggling to adapt. As a precaution, he infused a bit of his mana directly into the soil where they were replanted. The result was immediate. The mandrakes responded positively. It was clear they liked it. In the end, they were still monsters, and as such, absorbed magical energy well. But while tending the garden, Cheon also felt a strange presence watching everything from afar. He was almost certain it was the mechanical creature the hunters had been chasing. He wondered what exactly an artificial life form might want with him, but if it needed something, sooner or later it would show up. With that in mind, he hid the money behind one of the wall planks in the house and began organizing the items he had collected from the hunters who had died or vanished. The inventory was surprisingly good. There was a portable stove complete with small pots, 8 portal stones that allowed direct travel between the human and demon worlds, some spare clothes stained with pollen, and 2 sleeping bags. All in all, a great profit. At the bottom of one of the backpacks, he found a packet of instant ramen. It triggered an old memory, the last time he had eaten that was still back in the orphanage. The timing was perfect, as he was very hungry. Without wasting time, he began preparing the food. He fetched 500 milliliters of river water, but while collecting it, a carnivorous fish tried to attack him. With a simple flick, Cheon smashed the fish into several pieces and decided to use it as a protein source. To improve the dish, he tried to recall the ideal recipe. He would have added eggs, maybe a bit of green onion, but lacking the original ingredients, he improvised with whatever he found nearby. The eggs he used were strange, and the pan was in terrible shape, but he decided to cook anyway. The movement attracted the little robot. Previously hidden, the robot emerged from the bushes, drawn by the smell of food. Hungry, it transformed into a scruffy stray dog, hoping to appear harmless. Cheon noticed the obvious attempt. He knew it was the Chimera. It had transformed into that form to lower his guard, even faking an injury as part of the disguise. Even so, he offered food. He knew it wasn't an animal, but didn't see immediate danger either. The food looked awful. The smell was strong, but the taste brought back memories. It wasn't exactly like the ramen he ate as a child, but it was good enough to spark nostalgia. Meanwhile, the mandrakes were feeling sick just from the smell of the pan, completely nauseated. Later, when the robot finished eating, it began to walk away. It was still pretending to be injured, but Cheon noticed it was pretending incorrectly. The injury had switched legs. After a brief moment of hesitation, the robot corrected the mistake, pretending to limp with the other leg, and walked off. Cheon finished washing the dishes, and it was now time to deal with the clothes. The ones he had picked up were in good condition but covered in pollen. Carefully, he began scrubbing them, trying to be gentle. But the first stroke he made was so strong that it disintegrated the clothes, the stone, and everything around them. He realized he needed more control. He still had a spare piece and intended to do better this time. That's when he noticed the robot again. It had now transformed into a rock, and in fact, it wasn't the first time. When Cheon was washing dishes, it had turned into a fish. When he was looking at flowers, the robot had disguised itself as a tree. It did nothing aggressive, just observed. It seemed curious, as if discovering the world. But when a bee landed on it, the reaction was immediate. The robot ran off in a panic, stumbling over everything, desperate to escape the insect. Cheon had no doubt in that moment. The creature's mental age was around 5, and more than anything, the robot clearly hated bees with all its might. Cheon Do-won also hated that bee. When he saw it, he killed it without a second thought and quickly hid himself. Meanwhile, pretending not to notice the robot, he began admiring some flowers nearby, as if nothing had happened. After finishing washing his shirt, he commented to himself that at least this one he could use. Although it seemed too small for his size, he decided he'd wear it later anyway. Next, he went to check on the mandrakes. At that moment, the little robot appeared, picked up his shirt, and said it looked great. That alone was enough to trigger its transformation. The robot changed into its human form. Later, the mandrakes were visibly tired and behaving strangely. They were weak, and their roots completely dried out. Cheon-doan found it odd, since he had already tended to the soil. Curious, he began to investigate with a stick until he found the cause, a large infestation of parasites. After removing them all, the mandrakes looked much happier and reinvigorated. It was then that the little robot finally revealed herself in her human form. For the first time, she started talking directly to Cheon-doan, asking if that was his house and if he was a local resident. Cheon decided to play along a bit and asked from which tribe she came. She hesitated but eventually said she was from a very distant tribe, beyond the waterfall so far that no one could ever find it. Cheon, skeptical, asked if it was the famous coconut tribe, a tribe that didn't even exist. Still, she confidently said yes, she was part of the coconut tribe. Seeing the shirt on her, Cheon-doan commented that it looked a lot like his. The girl explained that in her tribe, if you take something, it becomes yours. Cheon chuckled at the response and said it was fine she could keep the shirt but wanted to know what a little girl from the so-called coconut tribe was doing there. She said she had been expelled and wanted to live with him in that house, since it had a roof, no bugs, and was a safe place. Cheon-doan understood that all she wanted was a place to rest. Even so, he warned that if she stayed, she'd have to help out. The girl immediately agreed, saying she'd work. Her first task would be to help in the garden. Cheon-doan wanted to build a new home for the mandrakes and create a large vegetable garden. She enthusiastically replied that she was strong and could do it. She grabbed a stick and started breaking the ground with ease. Cheon-doan watched everything and noticed that she made no effort to hide her powers. Probably, having grown up in a lab, she didn't even know what normal children were like. When introducing himself, Cheon-doan asked for her name. She then realized she didn't have one. She wanted something pretty, like the flower she had seen, and named herself Kim Nari. A few minutes later, the vegetable garden was already complete. The mandrakes seemed very happy with the new space, and Cheon-doan was impressed by the speed. It was clear that the plants were loving the environment. However, in that moment, he noticed that Kim Nari was crying. She said that seeing the mandrakes reminded her of the friends she once had. Cheon-doan wondered if she had truly had friends inside a laboratory. Suddenly, Kim Nari sensed a strange presence. It was monster mana. Cheon-doan tried to calm her, saying that monsters hunting each other was a common thing. But Kim Nari said that, before coming there, she had seen a monster that looked like a chicken being attacked by several others. Cheon-doan, sensing the same mana, confirmed that was probably it. It was painful, but that monster would likely be devoured. It was simply the food chain of the demon world. Then he asked if Kim Nari, by any chance, wanted to save it. She hesitated. She was fighting something inside her own mind. Cheon-doan quickly realized it was the brainwashing commands implanted in the lab. She couldn't act without a direct order. Cheon-doan told her that, if she helped, maybe that monster would survive. That was enough to motivate her. She rushed in the direction of the monster. When she arrived, she saw that several insects were attacking the small bird-like monster. Kim Nari began kicking the enemies with force, determined to protect it. The situation reminded her of when she lived with other children in the lab. She was always the best at everything. She was a mechanical chimera, admired but also envied. The more she stood out, the more the other children suffered. They were forced to go through dangerous experiments in an attempt to catch up to her. Her only friend was a chicken-shaped stuffed toy, which was destroyed by the others. In the end, she was beaten by the children who wanted to survive. Overcome by all that accumulated rage, Kim Nari used all her strength to completely destroy the horde of insect monsters. When she returned to Cheon-doan, she was desperate. She said the little monster wouldn't wake up. Cheon-doan, upon seeing it, thought he had seen that creature before. Using his mana, he identified that the injuries weren't fatal. He knew every creature had a unique magical signature. Even Shrunk, it was the same monster he had encountered before the immortal one, from which he had taken the hide. He wondered why it had shrunk so much. He realized that the creature's regeneration method was different from his own. Kim Nari asked if it was dying. Cheon-doan explained that it wasn't. It was just malnourished. Because it had shrunk, it needed less food, but it still wasn't able to absorb enough. With a little mana infusion from Cheon-doan, it would survive. It just needed time to recover. Kim Nari sincerely hoped the same wouldn't happen to her new little friend. With that in mind, she asked if she could keep the little bird monster. She wanted to take care of him, train him, and feed him. She assured Cheon-doan that it wouldn't be a problem for him. He commented that the creature could grow quite a lot. Kim Nari replied that she would just feed him even more. Cheon-doan said it was fine, she could do whatever she wanted. Maybe the monster could even be trained as a house guard. At that moment, the little bird finally woke up. The first person it saw was Cheon-doan himself, the same one who had once ripped off its skin. Recognizing the scene, it realized it was now being held by a child. Kim Nari, excited, announced that he had woken up, hugging him tightly, tossing him into the air and spinning around with him in her arms. The monster, desperate, begged to be released, but no one understood him. Only Cheon-doan seemed to comprehend what he was saying. Cheon-doan wondered why he could understand the language of that monster, while Kim Nari clearly couldn't. Later, the little bird was all bandaged up, saying it could barely move. Kim Nari commented that she had finished the treatment and now needed a name for him. The monster, exhausted, just begged to be taken away. Since he looked like a little bird, she suggested the name Kuko, Cuckoo. Cheon-doan thought it wasn't a bad idea. The monster tried to protest, but she didn't understand a word he said. Believing he was crying from thirst, Kim Nari threw a whole pot of water over his head. Kuko was now completely soaked and swollen. Kim Nari grew concerned and asked Cheon-doan what to do. He replied that the monster probably had more than enough water already. He then realized Kim Nari couldn't hear a word Kuko was saying. Only he could understand the monster's words, as if they were transmitted directly into his mind. Later on, household chores were beginning to pile up. Cheon-doan decided it was time to build a storage cabinet to organize everything. He cut the boards using his blade-shaped arm, but noticed the wood was coming out too warped. This was odd, since he had used the same method to build the table and chair. Without realizing it, Kuko gave a helpful tip. He said the wood in front of him was softer, because its color was different. Cheon-doan thought that made sense. The resistance might vary depending on the wood species. Kuko was outraged that he didn't know that. Cheon-doan then asked which color was the strongest. Kuko, surprised, realized the human could understand him. He tried to use telepathy to confirm it, but was blocked. Nothing could penetrate Cheon-doan's mind. Even so, Kuko asked if he could hear him. Cheon-doan explained that it wasn't exactly hearing. It was as if Kuko's words were being injected directly into his mind. More than that, he was surprised the monster could understand human language. That could only mean one thing. Kuko was one of the rare intelligent monsters born against all odds. It was the first time he had seen one in person. Cheon-doan then commented that they had met before. Kuko said he really had wanted to meet him again. He didn't know whether it was fate or coincidence, but Cheon-doan had saved his life, and he wanted to repay him. Cheon-doan remembered removing the poison from the bird's body and asked how Kuko could help him. The monster said he could guide him to where the red trees grew. Meanwhile, Kim Nari was being chased by someone with fire abilities. She knew it was someone from the lab, sent to capture and bring her back. She was terrified. She hated fire. The hunter recognized her as the mechanical creature he was looking for. Although uncomfortable attacking a child, he thought she would understand, since his own life was also at risk. But the next pillar of fire he launched was simply swallowed by Cheon-doan's power. Kuko beside him said he could guide them to the trees later. Cheon-doan agreed. First, they had to save Kim Nari. He noticed that the girl was clearly afraid of fire, and that her mind didn't seem stable. He didn't blame her. After everything she went through in the lab, anyone would be like that. Cheon-doan decided they would deal with that first. Kuko, watching the scene, muttered that the hunter was bullying a child and grumbled in protest. The fire hunter looked at Cheon-doan with contempt. He said he looked like a caveman getting involved in the fight, probably trying to protect the mechanical creature. He ordered him to get out while he still could, but Cheon-doan replied that he talked too much. The hunter shouted for everyone to get out of there, calling them bastards. With a simple strike of mana, Cheon-doan split the flames in half, struck the mountains, and buried the hunter under the rubble. Then, he ran to check on Kim Nari. She confessed she was very afraid of fire. Cheon-doan, looking into her eyes, said that when she felt fear, she had to learn to knock it down. And if the fear got back up, she should knock it down again. When Cheon-doan tried to pull the hunter away from Kim Nari, he ended up pulling off his wig. The man was completely bald. Cheon-doan was surprised and asked if he'd been bald the whole time. Kim Nari couldn't hold back her laughter and started mocking him, saying bald people were funny. All the bald folks watching that scene would probably feel humiliated by a 5-year-old. Despite the comedic moment, Cheon-doan felt something strange. That hunter shouldn't have had the strength to fight Kim Nari. To understand better, he decided to use Kuko's advice on mental resonance, a technique that allowed one to observe another's mind and memories. Doing so, Cheon-doan saw Kim Nari's memories from the moment of her creation. She had emerged as a small metallic blob, a sort of liquid gum shaped in the lab. The doctor in charge announced she had finally developed self-awareness and asked her not to fear the durability test. But instead of aggression, the hand that approached her head moved in to caress her. Cheon-doan, witnessing this, said she had done a good job. He knew trauma doesn't vanish overnight, but that gesture was an important first step. Back in the present, he wondered what they would do with that bald man. Kim Nari had an idea. Later, the hunter was hanging upside down at the edge of a waterfall. Kim Nari commented that fire didn't work underwater, so that bald uncle wasn't scary to her anymore. The man, hanging there, lamented that he hadn't crossed the demon world just to be humiliated by a little girl. Xian Doan, trying to teach her, said it wasn't right to judge someone just by their appearance. But deep down, he wondered if she hadn't adapted a little too quickly to that situation. He then went to fetch some water to prepare his ramen, even if it was that same terrible recipe as always. Meanwhile, the hunter was reflecting. To him, Xian Doan seemed to be at least class A, maybe even stronger, and was clearly hiding his true abilities. He assumed Xian was a reclusive hunter, someone who worked solo, yet here he was, taking care of a little girl and even cooking for her. That seemed suspicious. While he was thinking, Kim Nari celebrated. She had managed to catch some fish, although one was clinging to her head with its teeth. The hunter wondered what kind of fish that was and whether they were actually going to cook it. Concerned, he commented that they were going to ruin the food by adding so much water. He thought they didn't even know how to make proper ramen. He asked them to wait and promised to cook the meal himself if they would just let him down from the waterfall. Later, he was in the makeshift kitchen preparing the ramen. For him, it was more than just instant noodles. It was a matter of honor. He used basic culinary knowledge, just enough water to cover the noodles. When the water began to boil, he added the seasoning and the noodles. He controlled his breathing with precision. Knowing his heartbeat 60 times per minute, he waited until it reached 270 beats, the perfect timing. Once it did, he removed the noodles from the water, creating a unique texture using the surrounding air. He regretted not being able to add scallions, but accepted the limitations of the demon world. Even so, he gave it his all and felt no regrets. That was Namgi, Suk's sincere ramen. When he finished, he invited everyone to taste it. As soon as they tried it, they were surprised by the flavor. It was genuinely delicious. Kim Nari said it was wonderful. Kuko asked if humans ate that often. Xian Doan, experienced as he was impressed by the taste. When they finished, Nam Jisok asked if they had liked it. Xian Doan replied that it was so good, he could charge whatever he wanted. He said Gisok could ask for anything as long as he didn't cross the line. Nam Gisok, emotional, asked to be trained. He wanted to become strong like Xian Doan. Xian Doan didn't understand right away. He asked what Gisok meant by training. Nam Gisok said he considered him the strongest hunter he had ever met. Judging by the kind of house he lived in, it looked like he was on a long-term mission. Besides, he could cook other things too. He said he had certifications, was a chef, and that his father owned the best fried chicken restaurant around. He also understood how hard it must be to cross the portal constantly to buy supplies. He offered to help with clothes, food, and basic items. He volunteered to be a messenger and deliveryman. He even said he could pay for lessons. He wanted to train until he became a ranker. Xian Doan then asked why he had attacked Kim Nari. He wanted to know if it was for the reward. Nam Gishok got awkward and asked if he was referring to the Coconut Tribe story. Xian Doan said yes, that they'd stick with that story for now. Nam Gishok agreed. Xian Doan pressed further, asking for the real reason. Nam Gishok explained that it was something more personal, hard to put into words. He said he didn't care about the reward or Kim Nari. What really mattered was passing the hunter's test. After a good meal, Xian asked if that was really all, since he felt Gisok could do a little more. That's when they decided the next step would be a duel. Gisok thanked him for the opportunity, but Nari jumped ahead and said she wanted to fight in his place. Xian was the one who encouraged her, saying that if there was any fear inside her, she should face it directly. And so, Nari decided to walk into the fire. Gishok, watching the situation, told the little girl that even though Xian was stronger, he himself wasn't weak either. But Xian just pointed at a dark stone nearby and asked if Gisok could break it. Gisok was shocked and wanted to confirm if that was obsidian. When he realized it was, he replied that it would be impossible. No rank, a hunter could break it. But in the very next second, Nari, with a simple motion, completely vaporized the obsidian stone. And right after, she called the bald uncle over for a beating. Gisok was a natural awakened one, considered a prodigy from a young age. He awakened his powers at around 8 years old, extremely rare, as most hunters only awakened in late adolescence. With hard work and talent, he advanced quickly and was promoted to B+ rank before even turning 20. His rise was meteoric, and fame followed. That was a wonderful time, but it didn't last. While those around him began awakening too, Gisok started losing his hair. Baldness came too soon. He tried every treatment possible, and visited all kinds of clinics, but doctors were unanimous. He should give up. It was a hopeless case. Despite his impressive looks and natural talent, he lost his spark. He never made it to rank S, and all because of the baldness. Fame faded, and his growth stalled. All the most famous hunters had full, well-kept hair. One of them even regrew hair after awakening. Gi-seok clung to that hope. When he heard about an experiment that could cure baldness, he got excited, but the research took a different priority: a robot made of liquid metal. When that robot escaped, the cure project was shelved. Soon after, news broke that the metallic creature had fled to the demon world. Gi-seok saw his chance. If he could find that robot, maybe the project could resume. But now, in the present, he was being slammed to the ground by Nari's absurd strength. He couldn't understand how a child could be so powerful. To make matters worse, Cheon commented that he hadn't even landed a hit, so he'd have to try again if he wanted to win. Even so, Gi-seok didn't give up. As Cheon finished a piece of furniture he built himself, he thought Gi-seok was truly a courageous man. He had been beaten all day, yet still had energy for more. Creating a new fire spear, he asked for another duel. Kuko commented that the fire ability was interesting, but he couldn't even beat a child. Cheon also noted that Nari was unusual. When Gi-seok charged with his flaming spear, Nari simply turned into liquid metal, dodged the attack, then returned to normal form just in time to land a kick to his face, ending the match once again. Even after using all his techniques, Gi-seok had no intention of giving up. On the contrary, he saw that experience as a unique opportunity. He said he was a man who never gives up, but suddenly, his nose started to bleed. That's when Cheon asked how long he had been in the demon world. The answer came quickly: 9 days. Cheon then warned him that it would be better to return. The level of demonic energy accumulated in his body was dangerous, and could kill him if he stayed any longer. Gi-seok acknowledged that it made sense. Then Cheon said that despite everything, he still had potential to become an S rank. He just needed to put in the effort. But Gi-seok explained that he had already failed the test 6 times in a row. Everyone said there was no hope for him anymore. However, when Cheon looked into his eyes, he realized that his mana core wasn't fully developed yet. He advised him not to give up, but also warned that he needed to return and undergo purification. Gi-seok sincerely thanked him and promised to do his best. Cheon, observing everything, thought it would be great to have an S-rank subordinate someday. Before leaving, Gi-seok activated his portal stone and asked if there was anything else he could do. Cheon replied that, for now, everything was fine. Gi-seok said goodbye, promising to win next time they trained. He also asked if anyone had seen his wig, but Cheon said no. After he disappeared through the portal, Kuko warned that if that man attracted more hunters to the area, it could be dangerous. Cheon asked what he thought about it, since Kuko could read memories. Kuko replied that Gi-seok was truly bald and was sincere about his training. He didn't seem to be lying. With that, Cheon considered that maybe it was worth investing in him. Later, at home, Cheon was making some adjustments to the space. Among the improvements, he decided to build windows to make the place brighter. One of them was made at his own height, another at Nari's height. But Cheon realized this might be a problem at night. They would still need a good light source. Inside the house, Cheon mentioned an item called a shining stone. These stones had the ability to light up any dark environment, and gathering several of them could generate plenty of light. Kuko asked where it would be possible to find such a thing. Cheon explained that they usually appeared in volcanic zones. Kuko reacted with concern, saying that volcanic zones were the most dangerous areas for any hunter. And, in fact, that's where he came from. Cheon thought that maybe going back to his homeland could be good, but he noticed that Kuko didn't look happy at all about the idea. Nari, seeing her friend's expression, asked what Kuko had said. She thought he looked sad and felt sorry for him. Kuko admitted that the child was really very perceptive. Cheon explained that Kuko was worried about going back to the volcanic zone, and so he decided he would go alone. He told the other two to stay behind, but Nari immediately refused. She said she would go too, since she wasn't afraid of fire anymore. Cheon noted he had been right to believe in her recovery. She had overcome that trauma rather quickly. Kuko also decided to go, stating that he had things to resolve in that place. With that, Cheon agreed they would all go together, but said they first needed proper equipment to withstand the volcanic environment. Meanwhile, in the mandrake garden, some of the mandrakes were stomping on the wig that Gi-seok had left behind. In the volcanic zone, a creature stood devastated, completely consumed by sorrow. The narrative explains that this zone was one of the 3 most avoided areas by hunters worldwide. The volcanic ash caused severe skin damage, while the toxic gas mixed with demonic energy could cause death after just a few breaths. Kuko explained that this was why humans knew so little about that region. Despite this, Nari was there playing with lava as if it were something normal. Watching her, Kuko commented that maybe that was acceptable coming from a mechanical life form or something like that. But then then he wondered why Cheon was also so calm there. Cheon explained that he was a Chimera hunter. Kuko was surprised, as Chimera hunters typically didn't maintain a human form. Cheon explained that he used to be like that too, but after regenerating, he woke up in that human body and decided to remain that way. Cheon took the opportunity to ask Kuko how he managed to deal with hunters of that type. Kuko replied that sometimes it was just good to have someone to talk to. That already made a difference. Cheon found that comment relieving, and Nari, watching them, asked if they were talking too, because she wanted to understand them better. She was happy to hear that Kuko was just curious about what Cheon really was. To her, it was obvious that Cheon was a native of the demon world just like her, but Kuko explained that he was, in fact, the only true native there. The others, like her and Cheon, belonged to a different category. Back to the mission, Kuko mentioned that the shining stones usually appeared near lava sources. Cheon pointed to a crater in the distance, and Nari confirmed that was the right place. They had found where the shining stones were. As they got closer, they noticed there were indeed many stones there, but also a creature. It was a fire frog. Apparently, it was crying. Looking closer, Nari saw another frog in front of it. Kuko explained that the female had likely died along the way, and that the male was carrying the eggs. When fire frogs lay eggs, the female carries them on her back, since only their backs get marked during spawning season. But with the female dead, those eggs would also die soon. The lava's temperature was far too high for the eggs to survive on their own. Nari said the frog looked really sad. While she was saying that, Cheon jumped into the crater and asked the two of them to wait up top. Kuko grew concerned, saying fire frogs were extremely territorial. Indeed, the animal's first attack was a powerful burst of fire, but with a single touch of his poisonous needle, Cheon paralyzed the frog. He explained that his venom would keep it still for a few minutes, just enough time to act. He also mentioned that he had fire frog cells in his own body, which might explain his resistance. There was no way to save the female, but he could still save the eggs. When the male frog woke up, the eggs were attached to his back. Cheon assured him they would now be safe until they hatched. In the final moment, the frog looked back and leapt away with a giant jump. Nari, watching, commented that he had looked back maybe to say thank you, but Cheon corrected her, saying he was probably just saying goodbye to the female. Either way, they could now collect the shining stones. After gathering a good amount, Kuko was already tired of carrying so much weight. He used to play with those stones, but now they felt far too heavy. Cheon told Kuko he didn't have to keep helping, and suggested he go visit the people he used to know around there. He even said he brought a gift in case Kuko wanted to see them again. But Kuko replied that monsters don't have friends, and that he didn't plan to see anyone. He would just leave the gift behind, and that was that. Cheon commented that intelligent monsters were really different. For him, it was strange to imagine someone missing their own kind, but Kuko replied that he didn't exactly feel longing, only regret for not having said goodbye. When Cheon asked why he had left his nest, Kuko explained that the awakening of his great intelligence had both pros and cons. On one hand, he could now tell the difference between what was food and what wasn't, but he also became aware of his own loneliness. He was the only one of his kind who could speak, who could communicate. Maybe, if he had never learned language, he wouldn't feel this emptiness. That's why he left the Matrix and began living alone. His tribe probably didn't even know he had run away. At that moment, he finally managed to pull out one of the glowing crystals. And that's when Nari heard a cracking sound. Something seemed to be hatching. It was an egg. Cheon noticed that it could be a monster egg, although he didn't know which species. The crack at the top suggested it had perhaps been accidentally hit by the crystal. For the creature inside to be strong, it would need to break the shell on its own. Nari, joking, suggested they take the egg with them. Who knows? Maybe it would make a good boiled egg. Kuko was confused, saying no one knew what might come out of that thing. Cheon, however, thought he could store the egg in his drawer. It would be the ideal place, and he was curious to know what was inside. He decided they'd take it with them. Kuko thought that was crazy, since not even he who knew many creatures recognized the egg. But Cheon assured him it would be fine. He'd find a way to make everything work. Later, when they returned home, Gisok was already there. He had brought lots of supplies, but when he offered to help with the stones, he realized the weight was too much for him. That's when Cheon noticed Gi. Suk's face was bruised and asked what had happened. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the territory, members of Kuko's species found the gift left behind a simple packet of instant ramen. They loved eating it and even played with it. Back at the house, Cheon asked again if someone had hit Gisok, since he didn't seem like the kind of guy who would take that quietly. Jisok brushed it off, saying that, well, Nari had hit him a lot, but preferred not to go into detail. Instead, he said he'd go make something to eat. Later, while polishing the luminous stones, Cheon explained to Nari that he was building a lamp. She replied that he was really smart, knew a lot of things, and was great at explaining too. Since she met him, he'd always been kind, and that reminded her of her father. When Cheon asked how her father was doing back in the Kuko tribe, Nari casually replied that he was still there, as always. Meanwhile, Kuko was enjoying the sunset but was interrupted by 3 mandrakes who attacked him with their their supreme triple formation move. They jumped hard onto his belly, but nothing happened. He could only wonder what had happened to the mandrakes. They seemed to have lost their strength. Later, Jisuk presented his new meal, deep-fried tofu dumplings. He thought that despite the simple ingredients, the flavor would be good. The most important thing was the technique. He told everyone to eat as much as they wanted, but Cheon still wanted to know what had happened to Ji-suk's face. After everyone had eaten, Ji-suk finally explained. He had gone to the Hunter Association to register again for the promotion test to become an S rank. On the way, he ran into some hunters who mocked him for failing 7 times. The teasing turned into a fight. That was the gist of it. They also said things about his hair, which hurt his pride. Cheon commented that he shaves his head, so technically, he wasn't even bald. Ji-suk replied that shaving was better than being bald, only in the middle. Besides, hair loss was a medical mystery. No one knew the best solution. Cheon said he understood and asked when the promotion test would be. Ji-suk said it was in 60 days. Cheon then declared it was time to begin special training. Gi-suk said he'd accept anything to be trained by him. Cheon got straight to the point. The first phase of training would be washing dishes with Nari, who also needed to learn. The second phase would be cleaning all the luminous stones, which were still covered in volcanic ash. Ji-suk, confused, asked if that was really a special training. Cheon replied that if he refused, he might stay a B rank forever. So, Cheon and Nari went out to fish, saying it would help with digestion. Meanwhile, Ji-suk reflected on everything. Deep down, he knew Cheon had a reason for all of it. So, without complaining, he started carrying things and went to wash the dishes. He was determined. He wouldn't be a B rank forever. Ji-suk decided he wanted to follow Cheon's footsteps, to become a man like him. He wanted to be strong, helpful, useful, handsome, and of course have hair. Later, Nari commented that the fish weren't biting, but the truth was, all the fish were chasing Gi-suk, who was just trying to wash dishes. To make things worse, Gi-suk complained that aquatic monsters were his worst enemies because of his fire element. Cheon realized the guy needed a lot of supervision. He wondered if Gi-suk even knew what mana was for. It was just a matter of creating a protective barrier around his body. But Gi-suk replied that he had been trying, but it wasn't going very well yet. With that, Cheon handed him a luminous stone loaded with demonic energy. Ji-suk couldn't even hold it for a second. Then Cheon explained that some luminous stones are condensations of demonic energy. That kind of energy is raw, impure, and needs to be refined with human mana before it can be safely used. Hunters use their own mana to purify this energy. According to Cheon, Ji-suk's body already had a considerable amount of mana stored, but the problem was his lack of control over it. To help, Cheon unlocked one of Ji-suk's internal mana channels, guiding him to focus. With effort and determination, Ji-suk managed to purify the stone and lift it successfully. That's when he realized it had all been part of his training from the beginning. Cheon confirmed it and reminded him that he still had to finish the dishes. Ji-suk, excited, said he could be trusted and that one day he'd become the best homemaker. Later that night, everyone was sleeping in the cabin, now lit by a lamp made with the purified stone. However, Kuko woke up in the middle of the night after noticing something strange. Nari had gotten up and seemed different. She was bothered by how dirty her clothes always were. After all, they were important pieces, a gift from the Lord. No longer able to stand it, she began to wash them repeatedly. Cheon asked why she had gotten up just to do laundry. Kuko explained that she was a girl and only had those clothes. She wanted to feel pretty. Cheon, thinking about that, realized he had probably been careless. After all, she was still just a child. When Nari came out of the water, she was sparkling clean. Cheon, trying to play it cool, remarked that the night air was perfect for a walk. Nari joined in the joke, pretending she had also gone out just for a walk. Cheon then took the opportunity to tidy her up. He wrapped an aeon around her waist and added a few flowers for decoration, saying they were his favorites. At that moment, a strange noise interrupted the two, but it was just a bug. Still, Cheon took the chance to ask if she needed new clothes or shoes. Nari replied that Tari had already given her that outfit, and she liked it very much. Cheon said it was good to hear that, but the thought lingered in his mind. Later, near District 13, in the slums, Cheon reflected on what Nari had said, and concluded it probably wasn't enough. He came out of the portal wearing Dice's borrowed clothes and barefoot, determined to buy clothes for her. He found it ironic to be back in the suburbs and slums for that purpose, but hoped to find a shop around. That's when a boy appeared and offered to take him to the best store in the area for 10,000 coins. Cheon replied that he didn't have that much on him. The boy figured he was just another broke guy, maybe a rookie who entered a portal and came back empty-handed. He asked if Cheon at least had money for clothes. Since Cheon confirmed, the boy decided to take him anyway, saying he usually charged up front, but would make an exception. Cheon thanked the boy, who introduced himself as Bong-su. He asked if Cheon had awakened recently. Cheon replied with another question, didn't it look like it? Bong-su noted that that he had come out of the portal empty-handed and had probably been robbed in the alleys. He tried to cheer him up, saying it happened to everyone. Cheon was impressed by how much the boy knew and said so. Bongsu explained that he wasn't a kid, he just looked like one due to malnutrition. He was actually 17. He also warned Cheon not to go through a certain area. It was where all the bad things happened, and recently, the District 11 Space Gang had been taking over that territory. Cheon thought the name Space Gang was odd, but what he really hoped was that the orphanage was still standing around there. Meanwhile, in a clothing store, the shopkeeper was discouraged, wondering who had come up with the idea of opening a clothing store in the slums. She said young couples didn't even have kids anymore, and maybe it was time to change businesses. That's when Bongsu arrived and announced he was back. Annoyed, she said she wasn't even married yet to be called ma'am. Bongsu explained he had brought a customer, but she approached and wanted to know why he kept bringing poor hunters. She said it was obvious Cheon didn't have money to buy anything. The hunter was literally barefoot, but Bongsu insisted he was a good person. According to him, Madam Park had once said that if he ever found a hunter who looked like her dead brother, he should bring him to the shop. It had only happened twice. That's when Cheon interrupted the conversation and said he wanted to buy some clothes. He showed a check worth 10 million won. Instantly, Madam Park's behavior completely changed. Bongsu set a table, served coffee, cookies, and even a stool for the customer. Madam Park began showing all kinds of clothes the store had for children, adults, and every occasion. She enthusiastically presented everything, including to Nari, who was with them. In the end, Cheon bought practically half the store, making Madam Park extremely happy. She even asked if he wanted the clothes delivered, but Cheon said he would carry everything himself. He also gave Bongsu a generous amount of money, along with new clothes. In return, he only asked one last favor: to be guided to a safe, clean inn, preferably the best one nearby. Bongsu took Cheon to one right next to the police station. Cheon said he would go in alone and asked the boy to wait for him there. But Bongsu thought all of this was very strange. No matter how much money Cheon had, it was hard to understand why he was giving away so much. He had just received 100,000 won, new clothes, and was being treated kindly. That wasn't normal. He wondered if Cheon was a child trafficker. He even considered running away, but also thought maybe Cheon was just a kind man, like Madam Park had said. Meanwhile, inside the inn, Cheon was pleased with the place. It was clean and well kept. The owner was friendly and helpful. When he returned, he gave Bongsu the key to room 303, saying he had already paid a full year in advance, including meals. Bongsu, shocked, asked if that was real. He feared he was being kidnapped, but Cheon explained that it was he who had brought the boy there, and the place was right next to the police station. It was safe. Bongsu asked where the catch was. They had just met, and now he was getting a room, food, clothes, and a new start in life. Cheon replied that he had once been exactly like Bongsu. He asked him to take care of himself because they would surely meet again in the future. Back at the cabin, Cheon returned the clothes he had borrowed from Gishuk, also showing all the new pieces he had bought. Nari was extremely excited about the clothes. They were beautiful. Meanwhile, that egg stored in the drawer began to move. Later, Cheon felt a sense of inner peace while folding the newly bought clothes. Nari paraded around the house, trying out her new outfits and deciding which one looked best on her. She ended up picking one with a little chicken drawn on it, resembling Kuko, who asked if she really thought it looked like him. Cheon said it was a great choice and suggested they organize all the clothes. Kuko, however, asked what they were going to do with so much stuff, since the house had very little space. Cheon replied that he was thinking of building a closet inside the house. Kuko said that would mean cutting down more trees, but Cheon reassured him, saying there were plenty of trees around. Then he took the chance to ask what had happened to Gishuk. That was when Gisok appeared, with his shiny bald head, saying he had prepared the training equipment for his master. Cheon didn't understand at first, but Gisok quickly explained that the clothes had a very strong poison smell. He believed that was part of the training to overcome his own limits. He wanted to follow in Cheon's footsteps and become just as strong. Cheon then agreed that, now that he thought about it, those clothes really were perfect for training. He said he had already finished his own training, and that Gisok could use the clothes however he wanted. Kuko said he would pick which trees to cut down for the new closet, but Gisok asked if it wasn't dangerous. He was afraid of dying while wearing those poison-soaked clothes. That was when Nari called everyone. Something strange was happening with the egg. It was shaking a lot, as if it were about to hatch. Gisok asked, concerned, if it might be a disaster-class monster, but Cheon replied calmly, assuring him it wasn't. Nari looked at the egg and asked if Cheon was sure that a cute little monster would come out of it, but the doubt vanished as soon as the creature's eyes appeared inside the shell. The egg was really hatching. Gisok confirmed, saying it was definitely hatching. Nari repeated with excitement that the egg was really opening. Then, a small creature with sharp claws and a long tail emerged. It was a tiny fire lizard. Jisuk, curious, asked what species it was. Nari commented that it was very cute, but the little lizard jumped straight onto Gi-suk's face, screaming loudly. Later, Ji-suk was training while carrying a bunch of wood, and the baby now named Sasa kept hitting him on the head repeatedly. The worst part for Gi-suk was still the poison-soaked training clothes. He wondered how Cheon could even wear something like that. Meanwhile, Cheon was finishing the laundry and said it was fun to do it. Nari watched Sasa and said he ate a lot of bread, was kind, and obeyed commands. Cheon reminded her that in the end, she was the one who had saved the little monster, and asked if she had already thought of a name. Nari suggested Sasa, and Cheon said it was a great name. As soon as he was named, Sasa ran excitedly around the area. Nari said she was welcoming him as the newest member of their family. Still, Cheon admitted he had never seen a species like that before. Kuko also said he didn't recognize the creature, but since it came from a volcanic region, they needed to be careful. Most monsters from volcanic environments considered plant monsters to be a delicacy. Since there are barely any plants in volcanic areas, they eat them whenever they find one, especially when the plant is rich in magical energy. At that moment, Sasa began to approach the mandrakes. Kuko explained that, in other words, they were natural enemies. Everyone realized a confrontation was about to happen. Nari said she would stop them, because something bad could happen. Shion commented that it would be nice if they didn't fight. But this was the demon realm. Everything followed a hierarchy. Since Sasa was still very young, he probably wouldn't be that dangerous. Even so, Sasa looked ready for battle, while the mandrakes didn't. He charged with his claws toward the smallest one, but the larger mandrake protected it with a branch. The second mandrake managed to fight back. Sasa blocked with his tail, but the little one landed a direct punch to his cheek. It didn't hurt him at all, but Sasa ran off crying. Shion concluded that the mandrakes had won this round. Kyuko commented that it had been a good fight. Meanwhile, far away, a man with a hawk's head soared across the skies over the seas of that world. Later on, Ji-suk's training was still ongoing. Sasa didn't stop hitting his head, even after hours. Nari helped Sasa build the closet extension for the house, and Shion happily organized all the clothes. The next morning, Ji-suk finally finished everything. He had gone 2 days without sleeping. It was exhausting. He wondered if that could even be called training. But Shion said he had done an even better job than expected. Nari commented that the new clothes room had a very pleasant smell like flowers. Everyone else could smell it too. The fragrance gave a feeling of inner peace. Nari, curious, asked where the smell was coming from. Shion explained that Kuko had chosen a very fragrant type of wood for the construction. Even the mandrakes seemed to enjoy it, and Sasa had already dozed off because of the scent. Now that he had finished his tasks, Shion said he would make a quick trip to the human world. At first, he had been alone, so he didn't worry about these kinds of things. But now it was different. He asked them to take care of the house and said he was building a strong fence to protect them. Gi-suk commented that, looking at the house now, no one would want to approach. But Shion warned that you never know an S-rank monster, or even hunters looking for something rare might show up. Kyuko then explained that they would need materials with high magical energy that were also very resistant. He suggested going to the seaside. According to what he had heard, there was a material there even stronger than obsidian, a type of yellow quartz. Shion thought it was a good idea. He said that if they built the fence using that material and placed glowing stones along the bottom, the house would have a pleasant appearance at night. Everyone agreed it was worth going to the coast. Ji-suk was confused by what he had just heard, unable to believe what was happening. Meanwhile, Nari, excited, said she wanted to go to the beach, cheering at the idea. Ji-suk, however, reacted completely differently. He knew that place. Just thinking about it made his nose start bleeding, which served as the perfect excuse to escape the mission. He announced that, unfortunately, he would have to leave for the human world and go through a purification process. Before departing, he gave Cheon a serious warning. The coastal region was extremely dangerous. No hunter below A rank was allowed to set foot there. It was a restricted area. Most concerning of all, however, was the fact that 2 disaster-level monsters lived in that territory. According to him, they were both Chimera's hunters who had long ago been transformed into monsters. These Chimeras possessed bird-related abilities but retained their human form. At that very moment, one of those Chimeras was being hunted. A group of hunters had managed to track it down, and one of them attempted to hit the creature with his special ability. However, the attempt failed. The Chimera, with an eagle's head, dodged the attack and flew away at high speed. One of the hunters asked if they should chase after it, but the expedition leader decided against it. There were 2 Chimeras in that region, which made things far more dangerous. They chose to hide for now. The hunter insisted, saying it had already been 60 years since those Chimeras escaped. He believed they were either dead by now or had fused with some monster's body. The leader explained that, despite everything, they still considered those Chimeras failed products. He said the creation of Chimeras was one of humanity's greatest achievements, and they couldn't allow those failures to tarnish that legacy. That's why, for this mission, their goal was to erase erase any trace of those past mistakes. But while they talked, the eagle-headed Chimera suddenly reappeared, launching a powerful attack using its wings. The hunter's defensive barrier was destroyed in a single blow. As the creature prepared to finish the group, something unexpected happened. Nari appeared and stopped the hawk's strike. To her, that bird-faced old man was bothering people. Shion, watching the scene, thought the opposite might actually be true. One of the hunters commented that the mechanical creature was nearby as well. Shion gently stroked Nari's head, trying to calm her, and reflected that it wasn't the first time he had seen that hawk. In fact, he knew it very well. Shion softly asked whether the others still remembered him. And the number? Yes, the number was the same. One of the hunters, suspicious, warned the leader that the young man also looked shady. He suggested it would be best to retreat for now and leave the two behind. Meanwhile, the eagle-headed Chimera immediately recognized Shion. He remembered the scent of that boy perfectly, a scent only the two of them knew. The scent of that damned laboratory where the experiments had been done. Shion, known there as number 33, confirmed to himself that it had been a long time since he last saw number 17, and now they were face to face again in that unexpected setting.